Though she is a human commoner, she shares a rare dual soul bond with the Wolf King, when the secret is revealed that she is, in fact, the legendary holy maiden possessing the power to slay kings. She must choose between the greater good of his race and his eternal love. The air in the winter forest was thick with the scent of rotting leaves and the rusty, metallic stench of blood. The biting wind cut through my skin like a knife, and I lay tightly bound to the altar with rough hemp rope, my wrists already raw and bleeding. The aged and frenzied chants of the priests echoed all around me. They believed that by watering this cursed land with the blood of a lowly human commoner, they could appease the wrath of the ancient beast lurking deep within the forest. My name is Elena. No one knows that beneath this frail human form lies a power strong enough to tear this world apart. I clenched my teeth, feeling that searing, stinging pain deep within my spine. That was my mark, a curse feared by the world. With every gust of wind, I could almost hear my bones trembling in agony, as if that power of the Slayer King might spiral completely out of control at any moment due to the sheer terror I was feeling right now. Suddenly, the singing came to an abrupt halt. A suffocating sense of oppression swept across the forest clearing. It felt as though the earth had stopped breathing, and all the chirping of insects and birds had been silenced in an instant. Heavy footsteps echoed from the distance, each step seeming to tread upon the very heartbeats of the crowd. The shadows at the edge of the forest were parted by a pair of hands as gnarled as dead branches, and a figure so towering it seemed almost inhuman slowly stepped forward. It was Silas von Calder, ruler of the Kingdom of Winter, King of the Wolves. At that moment, his eyes blazed with an amber ferocity, not merely the gaze of a hunter, but the contempt of a superior being toward weaker creatures. Beneath his fur cloak, his broad shoulders and powerful muscles seemed to foreshadow destruction. Wherever he passed, the snow actually melted into water due to the intense, malevolent aura he radiated. Who gave you permission to touch the offerings on my territory? His voice was low and hoarse, like sparks drawn from flint. Every syllable carried an air of unquestionable authority. The priests around me fell to their knees, trembling. Silas, however, walked straight toward me as if he were strolling through his own backyard. He exuded an overwhelmingly domineering aura, scent blending pine, ice, and pure slaughter. That scent wasn't just a physical shock. It was a suppression that reached the very depths of my soul. I instinctively wanted to step back, but the ropes held me fast, leaving me no choice but to cower within that aggressive shadow. When he came to a stop before me, the oppressive pressure nearly suffocated me. It felt as though an invisible giant hand were clenched around my throat. He reached out with his calloused hand, roughly gripping my chin and forcing me to look up at him. What a pair of eyes they were, bottomless, wild, and cold, hiding countless icy resolves born of bloodshed and decision. The moment our gazes met, a piercing roar echoed in my mind, and it felt as though something deep within my soul had been violently torn out. My body shook violently. The Virgin's mark, normally hidden between my shoulder blades, began to burn fiercely beneath his palm due to this extreme spiritual upheaval, searing my skin like a red-hot iron. He seemed to sense something as well. His previously cold pupils suddenly contracted, and his grip on me tightened. It was a complex mix of shock, confusion, and a primal sense of possession. You. A confused growl escaped his throat, an instinctive vibration that only a werewolf makes when confirming a mate. That sound carried a wild resonance that made my blood begin to boil uncontrollably. That's impossible. I'm human. And he's the noble Wolf King. There's a chasm as wide as heaven and earth between us. This world is destined for werewolves to rule over humans. And in his eyes, I'm nothing but a speck of dust. Kill her, said his trusted guard behind him coldly, drawing a silver longsword. Alpha. This human defile your sight. She is not only a sacrifice but also the product of a forbidden union. Keeping her alive will only bring disaster. Silas's hand was still pressed against my cheek, and my body temperature was rising rapidly. It was a deadly chemical reaction, as if every inch of my skin were crying out for his touch. He didn't act immediately, but narrowed his eyes and stared intently at me, as if trying to see the secrets deep within my soul through my eyes. In that brief silence, The air seemed to freeze. He suddenly turned and kicked the brazier at the edge of the altar aside. As sparks flew in all directions, his wild figure stood as towering as a god of war. "Take her away," he ordered without looking back, his voice as cold as frost. "She is mine. This is fate's decree." I heard gasps of shock all around me. Silas had actually snatched a sacrificial outcast right before everyone's eyes, an act tantamount to openly defying the ancient bloodline codex. He walked toward me and untied the ropes binding me, when his scorching skin touched my icy flesh. The electric sensation sent shivers through my body, as if he were clutching the very thread of my life in the palm of his hand. He lifted me up in his arms, and that sense of strength made me feel a nearly desperate dependence on him. He leaned close to my ear, his warm breath brushing against my neck. His voice was so soft that only I could hear it, yet it carried an unmistakable air of dominance. "Don't try to deceive your master. Girl, that unsettling scent on you makes me feel both repulsed and fascinated. I'll dig it out myself to see what secret you're hiding that's making my wolf's soul so restless." I clung desperately to his cloak, my knuckles turning white. I knew my secret was now laid bare before him, and that the real disaster had only just begun. As he carried me, striding into that dark forest, I realized that I had not only lost my freedom but had also been swept into the eye of a storm powerful enough to topple the kingdom. At that moment, I had no idea that the wolf tattoo on the back of his neck was also throbbing faintly. It was a deadly pull and the beginning of a forbidden love doomed to destruction. The spires of Winter Castle pierced the leaden clouds, pointing toward the sky like sharp blades. When Silas led me into this fortress carved from black basalt, the oppressive chill and stench of decay in the air were even worse than at the altar in the forest. The attendants kept their heads bowed, afraid to meet the tyrant's gaze, while he kept a tight grip on my wrist. His aggressive warmth made me feel a suffocating sense of dependence. He tossed me into a side chamber of the tower, which was crammed with ancient texts, then slammed the heavy oak door shut. The sound of the chain sliding across the floor echoed harshly through the empty room. As if fate itself had trapped me in this cage of power, I slumped onto the coarse, shaggy carpet, feeling his scent slowly fade from the air, replaced by a more complex and dangerous scent, one belonging to the Wolf King's domain. I know the days ahead will be hell. In this rigidly hierarchical kingdom, a human appearing deep within the palace has no third option besides being labeled a spy or a plaything. Before long, a steady, deliberate knock sounded at the door. The door swung open, and it was not Silas who entered, but a woman dressed in an elaborate silk gown. She had an elegant silver braid, and her eyes betrayed an unmistakable look of disgust. "Are you that lowly commoner Alpha brought back from the altar?" Her voice was elegant yet laced with venom. "I am Victoria, Silas's fiancée, or rather, the future queen of the Winter Kingdom." I struggled to my feet, my heart pounding wildly in my chest as I tried to maintain the last shred of my dignity. "I'm just a stranger he happened to save." "Ma'am." Victoria let out a soft chuckle and walked slowly toward me, each step exuding that suffocating sense of aristocratic superiority. She circled me once, her gaze so piercing it felt as if it could cut through my skin. "Casually." The word casually doesn't exist in Silas's dictionary. "You're coated in the Wolf King's dragon's breath perfume. That's not a mark left by chance. It's the scent of a mate bond." In that instant, my face went pale. A spousal bond. That meant a deep fusion of souls. It meant that the moment Silas touched me, his wolf spirit had already made its choice. But that was absolutely impossible. He clearly despised humans. He was, after all, the iron-fisted ruler who would stop at nothing to preserve the purity of the Wolf clan's bloodline. "He doesn't love you, has just been bewitched by that strange energy you give off." She leaned close to my ear, her icy breath sending a shiver down my spine. "But I'll make you understand that in the Kingdom of Winter, a commoner's life is worth less than dust. Tomorrow is the kingdom's full moon festival. If you know what's good for you, you'll disappear immediately. Otherwise, I'll make you know what it means to wish you were dead." No sooner had she finished speaking than heavy footsteps sounded once more. Silas stood in the doorway, his face dark with gloom, His gaze passed over Victoria and landed directly on me. That complex look in his eyes, a mixture of the longing drawn by a spouse's instinct and the extreme self-restraint of a king exercising his authority. "Victoria, get out." His voice was completely flat. Yet it made the air in the room freeze instantly. Victoria curtsied gracefully, but as she turned to leave, I caught a fleeting glint of murderous intent in her eyes. Silas closed the door and walked up to me. His massive frame blocked the moonlight streaming through the window, plunging the room into half light and shadow. He said nothing, but forced me to stand against the wall, and his burning palm pressed against my abdomen, the most sensitive spot of the Virgin's mark. "What exactly are you?" he asked in a low voice, his pupils turning a wild golden color. "Why does my wolf spirit, the moment it sees you, go mad with the desire to conquer you? What kind of demon one that isn't humani's hiding beneath that calm exterior of yours?" I felt myself struggling to breathe. That overwhelming sense of oppression made him look like a predator about to strike. I forced myself to stay calm and looked him straight in the eyes. "I'm just a pharmacist. Silas, if you're troubled by the pact we made that night, you can kill me, but I know nothing about demons. And I certainly know nothing about your so-called spousal intuition." He let out a cold laugh, leaned in, and brushed the tip of his nose gently against the side of my neck, lingering over that vulnerable pulse. It was an extremely dangerous tease that made my body shudder instinctively. "Kill you? No." His voice carried a hint of cruel satisfaction. "I'll keep you by my side as my contract bride. I'll watch with my own eyes until you can no longer bear this torment of the soul and give yourself away. A contract marriage. Elena, this is the fate you cannot escape." At that moment, I finally realized what kind of conspiracy I had been caught up in. He didn't truly love me. He was using me as bait to lure out the forces lurking in the shadows that were trying to resist him and even to awaken the power of the Slaughter King within me. A power I hadn't even fully realized I possessed. I looked out the window at the bright, full moon, and a sense of despair welled up inside me. Tonight's full moon festival will likely be my first real battle, one in which I'll struggle to find my footing within these fortress walls. Sellers let go of me, turned toward the closet, and casually tossed out a dusty, coarse cloth skirt. "Put this on. Tonight, you'll attend the gala as my special guest. I want to see the looks on the ministers' faces when they see the great Alpha bring back a filthy commoner as his companion." The arrogance and mockery in his eyes were like an invisible shackle, completely sealing off any chance I had of escape. I looked down at the coarse cotton skirt in my hands, my fingernails digging deep into my palms. This was more than just an appearance. It was a humiliation that placed me on the rack, and a rehearsal for a plot that would force me to bare my fangs. As night deepened, the torches inside the castle flickered in the wind, casting a long shadow of Sarah's, standing at the boundary between light and shadow. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw a hint of melancholy I couldn't decipher. Was he testing me? Or had he himself lost his way in this mad game of finding a mate? The banquet hall of Winter Castle was resplendent with gold and splendor. Massive chandeliers cast a flickering, warm glow, bathing every intricately carved banquet table in a dreamlike radiance. The air was filled with a blend of the aroma of roasted meat, the richness of aged red wine, and that distinctive, aggressive pheromone scent unique to beast-like alphas. Wearing my rough cloth skirt, I stood out like a sore thumb among this crowd of lavishly dressed, haughty, and aloof werewolf nobles. Silas was standing not far from me. He wasn't staring at me the whole time, but was instead receiving the adoration of the crowd like a monarch. However, I could sense his gaze sweeping over my body every few seconds, whether intentionally or not. Every time his gaze swept past me, I felt a faint tingling at the nape of my neck. It was the mark of the saint reacting to his powerful wolf spirit. This sensation was extremely dangerous. It made me feel as if I were standing completely naked before these keen-scented werewolves, with no secret left to hide. So this is the so-called outcast everyone's been talking about. A lord wearing a velvet cloak walked past me with a sneer. He deliberately bumped into my shoulder, trying to knock me over onto a tray full of red wine. I stumbled a step, but at that very moment, My sense of balance became as steady as a rock thanks to some kind of subconscious instinct. I didn't possess the immense strength of a werewolf, but when provoked, the power within me would automatically surge into my feet, allowing me to stand firm. The Lord seemed to sense that something was amiss. He furrowed his brows slightly and was about to speak when, in the blink of an eye, Silas appeared between us. "Lord Spencer. It seems rude behavior is not welcome at my banquet." Silas's voice was light, yet it carried a bone-chilling coldness. His hand naturally rested on my waist, and in that instant, a burning heat traveled through the fabric to my skin, not only making my heart skip a beat, but also intensifying that tremor of soulful connection. Lord Spencer's face turned pale in an instant. He bowed his head tremblingly in apology and retreated awkwardly into the shadows. Silas wrapped his arm around me as we walked toward the center of the hall. He looked down at me, an inscrutable gleam flickering in his amber eyes. "Just now, were you using some kind of magic to keep your balance?" He lowered his voice. There was no reproach in his tone, only a hint of amusement. That didn't seem like a reaction a human would have. "I just have a bit more stability in my lower body." "My lord, you're reading too much into it." I forced myself to stay calm, but my heart was pounding. "That's for the best," he said, leading me to the window, where moonlight poured down like a silvery ribbon into the courtyard outside. Just then, an unexpected incident occurred. As a servant responsible for pouring wine passed by us, the light in his eyes suddenly twisted, and a silver blade hidden in his sleeve stabbed toward Sarah's back without warning. The blade was coated with a potent poison specifically designed to counteract a werewolf's self-healing abilities. "Silas, watch out!" I screamed almost instinctively. At that moment, the power that had long been sealed within me seemed to sense the danger. Without a moment's thought, a burst of invisible cold energy shot out from my fingertips. Time seemed to stand still in that instant. The assassin was violently flung backward by a tremendous repulsive force, slamming into a stone pillar and losing consciousness on the spot. As for the silver blade, it shattered into countless specks of metal midair, scattering down in a shower. A deathly silence fell over the hall. All the werewolf nobles stopped what they were doing and stared at me in horror, their eyes filled with disbelief and fear. Silas spun around abruptly. He looked at the metal shards scattered across the floor, then turned his gaze to Maia's, expression shifting instantly from wariness to profound astonishment. He had realized something. His mate, this human he had believed to be frail and powerless, possessed the strength to effortlessly shatter silverware. "You." Silas strode toward me, and the werewolves around us began to murmur. Some even started baring their Fongsan instinctive defense mechanism werewolves exhibit when faced with an unknown threat. "Arrest her. She's a witch. She's the vessel of King Li's power," someone shouted. Selaz's guards quickly surrounded me, and the look in their eyes was no longer one of scrutiny but of hostility. I felt the burning sensation of the saint's mark reach its peak. The power that threatened to erupt filled me with panic. If I were to fully awaken at that moment, not only would I kill everyone here, but Selaz would also be severely injured by the energy surge. Selaz looked at his clan members, who were growing restless all around him, and suddenly made a decision that took everyone by surprise. He abruptly shielded me behind him, and his eyes instantly turned a pure gold, the ultimate expression of an alpha's rage. His terrifying aura instantly swept through the hall, forcing all the nobles to their knees. "Who dares lay a hand on her?" he roared across the hall, his voice filled with the fury of a king. "She is my consort, the anchor of my soul. Even if she is a sorceress, even if she is a scourge, only I can pass judgment on her. It is not for you, my lowly subjects, to interfere." He wrapped his arm around mine and tightened his grip, so tightly it felt as if he were trying to merge me into his very being. He led me swiftly through the crowd, rushing toward the terrace outside the hall. A cold wind blew as we escaped the chaos, only to find ourselves in an even greater crisis. "Who are you?" "Exactly." He pinned me against a stone pillar on the terrace. The moonlight illuminated the madness on his face. "That power you just displayed. It's an ancient curse that even I fear. Elena. If you don't want me to kill you right now, tell me immediately." Why do you possess the power of the Slayer King? I looked at him, tears welling up in my eyes, my heart aching beyond measure. I loved him. The bond created by this contract made him irresistible to me. But I couldn't tell him that my very existence was meant to bring an end to his race. Silas, kill me, I said, my voice trembling. If you don't want your dynasty to fall, if you don't want your lands to become a graveyard, kill me now. This is our only way out. He stared intently at me, breathing heavily, and suddenly, he kissed me fiercely. It was a kiss tinged with the taste of blood and despair, a mixture of vows and destruction. As if he were seeking one last moment of tenderness in the final moments of his life. Just then, the sound of heavy drumbeats echoed from outside the castlight was the signal that the rebels were laying siege to the castle. And also the death knell heralding the complete unveiling of my fate. The drums of war shattered the silence of the night like a muffled thunderclap. Flames shot skyward from the castle walls. The rebel forces had launched a full-scale assault, accompanied by the furious howls of a pack of wolves. Yes, the entire domain was plunged into chaos. The hand gripping my chin instantly grew as hard as steel. Though he sensed the danger outside, his gaze remained fixed on my face, as if he were trying to strip my soul bare amidst the chaos. Tell me, Elena. His voice was so low it sounded like a growl, laced with a desperate madness. Those rebels out there, did they come for you? Those legends passed down at the ancient altar, the ones that say the Chosen One has the power to end the rule of the wolf clan, is all of this true? I could feel the violent fluctuations emanating from him, born of extreme anger and fear, and my heart felt as if it were being torn apart. The rebels' drumbeats were not merely a call to attack. They sounded more like a death knell, unveiling the shameful truth of my origins. I clutched his ornate yet cold shirt tightly, my fingers turning pale from the force of my grip. Silas, you must let me go. If I don't leave, this entire castle will turn into a bloodbath. Your subjects and your army will all perish under that power. I never back down from a fight, and I certainly won't abandon my spouse. Silas suddenly pulled me into his arms, his powerful frame shielding me like a wall of bronze and iron. Just then, a guard, his face covered in blood, rushed onto the terrace, knelt on the ground, and reported loudly, "Alpha, the rebels are unstoppable. They claim they'll spare everyone inside the castle if we hand over that holy maiden." The council. Those old fossils on the council have already agreed. They demand her immediate execution to quell the public outrage. The council. Silas let out a cold laugh, his voice tinged with a chilling, murderous edge. Tell those good-for-nothings who only know how to hide in the shadows that if they dare lay a finger on Elena, I'll personally rip their throats out. He turned around, picked me up, and strode toward the basement. Along the way, he avoided the crossfire at the main gate and slipped directly through the palace's secret passageways. His steps were steady, each one as if he were gambling with fate. I nestled against him, feeling his heart pound like a drum. This might be the last time we'd be this close. Once he learned of my true mission, once he realized the holy light within me that could destroy his power, would he still protect me like this? "Don't be afraid," he said suddenly, his tone surprisingly gentle. That contrast caused my defenses to crumble instantly. "Even if you are the legendary Holy Maiden, even if your power is great enough to slay a king, as long as I am still here, you will always be my mate. In this world, no one can take what belongs to men, not even the gods, from me." Silas von Calder. We arrived at a secret chamber deep underground, its walls covered with intricate patterns of forbidden spells. Silas gently set me down, and in that instant, he suddenly dropped to one knee, took my hand, and solemnly slipped the ring symbolizing the power of the Wolf King onto my finger. The ring's cold, metallic feel instantly resonated with the mark within me, sending a massive wave of energy surging through the chamber, so powerful that even the surrounding stone walls began to crack. "Are you crazy?" I exclaimed. "This ring contains all the wolf soul contracts of the Winterlands. It will burn your soul. If this is the only way to temporarily suppress the rampaging power within you, then so be it," he said, his eyes cast down, fine beads of sweat beading on his forehead. He was using his own life force as a barrier to seal away the power that had awakened within me. Just then, the door to the secret chamber was kicked open with a loud crash. Leading the group was not a rebel, but Ceres's uncle Cadro, a highly respected elder of the Wolf clan. He held the scepter symbolizing royal authority, followed by a group of priests with grim expressions. "Nephew, you've been too deeply beguiled by this woman." Cadro's voice was hoarse and cold. "She is the legendary holy maiden of the Slayer King. The poison that will destroy our race flows through her veins. Today, whether you like it or not, we will either take her away or execute you along with her." Silas slowly stood up, and at that moment, the aura surrounding him became terrifyingly intense. His eyes had completely turned a bloodthirsty crimson, a sign that he was about to enter a frenzied state. "Cardero, you're not just a traitoriously fool," he said as he strode forward, the floor cracking with every step he took. "If you want to touch her, you'll have to step over my dead body first." At that moment, a political struggle within the court erupted in full force. Celas stood face-to-face with the elders, demonstrating a ruler's absolute determination to defend his domain and his consort. Yet, in Cardero's eyes, I saw a cold smirk of triumph. He didn't care whether he could actually kill Celas. All that mattered to him was whether he could thoroughly enrage me in the process, causing me to lose control on the spot, thereby forcing Celas to exhaust all his energy in subduing me. "Silas, don't." I tried to stop him, but my words were drowned out by an angry roar. Just as the two clashed, a silver spike emitting black smoke pierced through Ceres's defenses and struck him squarely in the shoulder. He let out a muffled groan and collapsed to his knees. Black blood oozed from the wound, giving off a pungent stench. It was a potent poison specifically designed to counter the Wolf King's bloodline. I watched him fall right before my eyes, and that pain and despair caused my sanity to completely shatter. I felt the mark of the Holy Maiden on my spine shatter completely in that moment, and a blinding white light powerful enough to incinerate all things in the world erupted from my body. That was the power of the Slaughter King, the destructive power that truly belonged to the Holy Maiden. Cadero watched the scene unfold, his eyes brimming with greedy ecstasy. "Awaken, Holy Maiden. Let your power devour this decaying dynasty and reduce it all to ashes." I stood bathed in the light, with everything around me warping. I didn't know whose destruction was imminent, nor whether this force would bring an end to my beloved. The suspense reached its peak at that moment, when this world-shattering force finally erupted. Would Silas survive? And where would I end up? A blinding light pierced the eternal gloom of the basement, and the entire space cracked like a mirror under the shockwaves of the maiden's power. I could no longer feel my body. It was as if my soul had been stripped away, and I felt like a blazing fire that had been forcibly crammed into a human shell. That power, imbued with ancient majesty, sought to erase every trace of the wolf from my surroundings. Cadro and his priests let out desperate screams amid the blinding light. Their flesh seemed to be scorched by invisible flames, and the totems that symbolized the Wolf clan's dignity had, in that moment, become utterly rotten. Yet my gaze pierced through the blinding white light, fixed firmly on Ceres. He knelt on one knee, the poison-tipped silver spike embedded in his shoulder still oozing black, pus-filled blood. His once indestructible body looked so fragile in the glow of the holy light. His fur began to fall away, revealing human skin covered in deep burned scars. "Silas!" I let out a sharp, rasping cry from the back of my throat, trying to rein in that uncontrollable power. He looked up, his amber eyes still gleaming with stubborn devotion even in the midst of his agony. He looked at Menet as a destroyer, but as the one and only mate of his life. He reached out, trying to touch me through the layers of white light. It was an extremely dangerous move. His bones creaked with a bone-chilling sound under the pressure of the sacred power. "Elena," he murmured softly, his voice broken and weak, yet filled with unquestionable strength. "Don't stop. If you're going to destroy this world, you'll have to step over my dead body. As long as you still remember who I am." At that very moment, he actually chose to accept my power rather than resist it. He tried to use his own heart as a shield, forcibly channeling the power of the Slaughter King, which was about to destroy everything into his own body, in order to preserve my fragile human soul. As he moved, that violent energy instantly shifted its course. The stone pillars in the basement collapsed with a thunderous crash, and the very foundations of the castle began to shake. Kadro was hurled away by the shockwave, slamming hard into the wall and spitting blood. I fell into Silas's arms, feeling the excruciating pain of our souls being forcibly joined. "You're crazy. You'll die if you do that," I cried out, tears streaming down my cheeks and falling onto his chest, which was covered in wounds. Silas's face was deathly pale, and a trickle of blood seeped from the corner of his mouth, yet he wore a grim yet relieved smile. "Death, if I cannot protect you, these hundreds of years of my life would have been nothing but a hollow dream." He pulled me forcefully into his embrace, and in that moment, the soul contract between us reached an unprecedented resonance. My maiden's mark gradually cooled beneath his palm, and he sealed that destructive power deep within his bloodline, making it a part of his wound. Silence finally returned to the basement. The priests lay sprawled among the rubble, their fates unknown. Kadero struggled to his feet amid the smoke and dust, but was frozen in place by a single glance from Silas. Silas forced himself to his feet. Though gravely wounded, he still stood like an unshakable god of war. "Get out," he ordered the traitors coldly. "Take your minions and get out of my sight, or I'll make your souls vanish completely in the next second." Kadero shot us a venomous glance before finally retreating in panic with his remaining guards. This political struggle ended in a bitter victory for Sarah's, but it also revealed the truth about my identity. I am the Holy Maiden, the sworn enemy of the Wolf clan. It was just the two of us left in the room. Silas led me to the corner. His breathing was heavy, and every breath carried the scent of blood. He pulled open my collar and gently kissed the spot where the mark was. The touch was incredibly gentle, yet it sent a sharp, tearing pain through my heart. "You understand now, don't you?" I said, my voice choking up as I looked at his ashen face. "My very existence is destined to bring about destruction. The powers I displayed just now were only the beginning of my awakening." "I know," he replied softly, pulling me close against the crook of his neck. "But I don't care. This so-called racial cause is nothing more than a lie concocted by a bunch of old fools for the sake of power. Elena, if you are the Slayer King's blade, then I am the king who willingly lets you pierce me." He reached out and gently stroked my hair, as if he were handling the most precious jewel in the world. Yet, behind him, I saw the black patterns spreading beneath his shirt. They were the mark of a curse left by his forced absorption of my power, and those patterns were slowly crawling upward along his spine. "You've been carrying too much of a burden." I tried to run my hand over those lines, but he grabbed my hand and held it down. "Don't touch it," he said hoarsely, his eyes filled with a dying madness. "This is our shared pact. As long as I'm alive, this power won't turn against you. But Elena, you must promise me that no matter what happens in the future, you'll never leave me." Exhausted, he closed his eyes and fell asleep, leaning against my shoulder. I knew this was only a brief moment of peace. Not only did I have to face the Wolf Clan Elder's hunt, but I also had to contend with the forbidden power awakening within me, a power that could erupt at any moment. And what terrified me most of all was that Sarah's life force was flowing endlessly into me through that blood-red cursed pattern. He was truly risking his own life to keep me alive. Outside the door, I could faintly hear more heavy footsteps. They were the elite troops mobilized by the council, and it seemed they had no intention of stopping there. The flickering light from the torches outside cast shadows on the stone door, resembling the claws and fangs of countless demons, slowly gnawing away at the last vestiges of peace in this secret chamber. Silas had fallen into a deep sleep on my shoulder. His body was cold as iron, and only the spreading black curse patterns glowed with an eerie purple light in the dim torchlight. He was paying the price for me. The elite of the council, the Wolf clan's most fanatical executioners, pay no heed to Sarah's kingship. In their creed, only purification is the sole path to preserving the race's eternal existence. I gently slipped out of his embrace and settled him onto the heavy fur-covered bench. With every movement, I proceeded with the utmost care. Afraid of waking this king who had nearly exhausted his life force for my sake, I walked to the stone platform in the secret chamber and gazed at the dust of holy light lingering on my fingertips. I knew that if I didn't leave, there would be no escape for either of us. As long as I remained by his side, those greedy elders would have an excuse to wage war in the name of protecting the throne. I pulled a small silver knife from my bosom, one I always carried with me to cut herbs while brewing potions in the forest. Now, it was the only thing I had to prove my identity. It was engraved with the ancient Slayer King's incantation. Silas, I'm sorry, I whispered softly, my tears falling onto the blade and reflecting a faint, cold glint. I am a prisoner of this fate, but I cannot drag you down into the abyss with me. I leaned down and pressed a kiss so light it was almost imperceptible to his forehead. I could feel the domineering and fiery aura of his wolf spirit gradually fading. If we didn't seek the suppressing power of the sacred spring soon, the curse within him would end his life completely before dawn. I slipped on my cloak and stepped into the underground tunnel leading to the outskirts of the kingdom. No sooner had I walked a few dozen meters than a suffocating aura of power swept over me. At the other end of the passage, several figures blocked my path like ghosts. They were the shadow guard of the Council of Elders, led by Cadero himself. Saint, so you've chosen to flee after all. Cardero's voice echoed through the dim tunnel. A cruel smile played on his lips as he clutched a spear that reeked of decay. Do you really think that by leaving, Silas will survive? As long as your mark remains within him, his life belongs to you. Kill you, and he lives. Spare you, and he dies. Which will you choose? I gripped the small knife in my hand tightly, and the sacred power within me surged once more with fear and anger. But just a split second before I could unleash it, that warmth belonging to Sarah's and lingering in my blood forcefully suppressed my impulse. He had once told me that he was the king who willingly allowed himself to be pierced. I'll take the other path, I said calmly, a determination I'd never felt before flashing in my eyes. I suddenly slashed the small knife across the palm of my hand. The moment the fresh blood hit the ground, it did not seep into the soil but instead transformed into a dazzling golden formation. This is the altar taboo passed down through my family. Even though I am merely a commoner, the spell to end all tyranny is etched into my bloodline. Cadero's expression changed, and he recoiled in horror. You actually want to use your own life to break the seal? You'll be reduced to ashes. If it means he can live, what does any of this matter? I stared at him coldly as my body began to glow with a translucent light. Just as the shadow guard charged at me, I cast my spell. A powerful spatial disturbance warped the entire tunnel. And at that moment, I lost all my senses. When I woke up again, I was lying beside the sacred spring deep in the winter forest. This was the source of all my secrets. And it was also my refuge. But I wasn't alone. I heard heavy, ragged breathing, not far away, in the shade of the trees. Silas staggered toward me, his body severely wounded, his armor was shattered, and his once stern face was now smeared with blood. But the moment his golden eyes fell upon me, they blazed with a fury powerful enough to set the entire forest ablaze. Who gave you permission to leave? He growled, his voice trembling as he practically crawled toward me. He grabbed my shoulders with such force it felt as if he were going to crush me, but that grip instantly turned into an uncontrollable embrace. You foolish woman. Do you really think sacrificing yourself will solve everything? Without you, even if I ruled the entire kingdom, it would be nothing but a vast graveyard. The cursed markings on his body had already spread to his neck. That black color looked startlingly vivid in the faint glow of the holy spring. He looked at me and suddenly gave a tragic yet gentle smile. It was the most heart-wrenching sight I had ever seen. A contract is based on equality, Elena. He pressed his forehead against mine, his voice low and incantatory. From this moment on, we are no longer master and servant. No longer the Wolf King and the sacrifice. We are comrades in arms. No sooner had he finished speaking than the sound of warhorses galloping in unison echoed from all around the forest. Cadro had led the rebel forces here in pursuit. This battle was now unavoidable, and its outcome was uncertain. The forest air was torn apart by a chill, murderous intent. The rebel forces led by Cadero surged like a black tide from all directions into this sacred land bathed in ancient moonlight. Their armor reflected a bloodthirsty, cold glow in the torchlight. And the shadow guard at the forefront even transformed into wolf-like forms, their sharp claws scraping against the rocks and sending shrill sparks flying. Silas, you've completely lost your mind. Cadro leaped down from his warhorse, his staff radiating a sinister, necromantic aura. For the sake of a lowly saintess, you've actually renounced the throne and now you intend to sacrifice the very foundation of the entire kingdom to this damned, forbidden power. Today, I will sever this contract and set everything back on the right path. Although Silas was gravely wounded, the moment he stepped in front of me, the dignity inherent in an alpha still weighed down on the entire crowd like a mountain. He casually picked up a broken sword that had fallen to the ground. Blood dripped from his fingers, and every drop seemed to be on fire. Back on track, Silas let out a low, scornful chuckle, the defiant defiance of a beast facing a pack of wolves. Your so-called track is nothing more than centuries of decay and weakness. The kingdom I rule has no need for scum like you, who hide in the shadows and plot against your master. The battle erupted in an instant. Like a whirlwind, Silas charged into the enemy ranks despite his severe injuries. His movements were astonishingly fast, and every strike landed precisely on a vital spot, sending severed limbs and blood flying through the night air. However, his injuries were too severe. Forcing the power of the wolf spirit caused the curse markings which had already spread to his neck to begin creeping up his cheeks. Those black fissures seemed poised to drain his life away bit by bit. Stop, Silas. You're going to die. My heart was breaking, but I knew that if I didn't intervene now, he would surely die. I could feel that dormant power raging wildly through my veins. It was no longer the oppressive mark of the saint, but a destructive will born of the desire to protect those I loved. As I raised my hands, the temperature in the air plummeted, and countless snow-white feathers of light materialized out of thin air. They were not merely light, they were blades of judgment capable of piercing through any defense. In the name of the Holy Maiden, I hereby pass judgment. My voice grew ethereal and icy. It was no longer my own will, but this forbidden power speaking through me. Wherever the white light passed, the rebels let out desperate roars as their bodies rapidly dissolved under the purifying power of the holy light, turning to dust. As Cadero watched his elite troops vanish into thin air in an instant, genuine fear finally flashed in his eyes. No. This can't be. You're the cursed outcast. How could you possibly have mastered the true form of the Slayer King's power? Because I'm no longer just passively enduring this, I said, staring at him coldly as I walked over to Silas and placed my hand on his back. At that moment, the bond between us underwent a fundamental transformation. It was no longer just him protecting me. Instead, our souls fused completely, forming a cycle. Silas sensed my power, and his once dull eyes instantly regained their dazzling golden glow. He took my hand in a reverse grip, and at that moment, our energies merged into one, forming a translucent golden shield that enveloped the entire sacred spring area. Cadero staked everything on this one move. He thrust his staff forcefully into the ground, activating the magic-suppressing barrier he had already set up. Since you're so determined to bring about destruction, then you'll be buried along with this land. In an instant, the earth split open, and the waters of the sacred spring surged upward, forming a deadly vortex. This was the final, ultimate technique left behind by the Wolf clan's ancestors' soul collapse. It made no distinction between friend and foe, aiming to drag every living thing within its range into nothingness. Elena, hold on to me. Silas wrapped his arms tightly around my waist as the ground shook. His voice cut through the chaos with remarkable clarity, tinged with a calm acceptance of death. No matter what lies on the other side of the void, as long as you're there, that is my territory. I closed my eyes and channeled every ounce of the Slayer King's power within me. This time, rather than trying to destroy my enemy, I transformed that power into a barrier, forcibly carving out a vacuum in the midst of this soul storm. This was the first time I had truly mastered this power. That sensation, as if I could touch the very laws of the world, made me realize that I was not some kind of calamity. I was merely a variable that this decaying age could not tolerate. After the storm subsided, nothing remained but ruins around the holy spring. Cadero's body had been reduced to ashes in the aftermath. Silas knelt on one knee, gasping for breath. Miraculously, the cursed markings on his body had faded during that final blow. Through this battle, our soul contract had achieved its ultimate transcendence. But he was still weak. His white shirt front soaked through with blood. He lifted his head, his amber eyes fixed on me, as if to confirm that I was still real. "Is it over?" "Not yet," I said, helping him to his feet and gazing toward the kingdom. "As long as that council of elders remains, as long as these twisted laws of bloodline persist, our war has only just begun. But this time, Silas, we are no longer fugitives." He flashed a long-absent, wild smile and pulled me tightly into his arms. "Well then, let's go back. Let's uproot that rotten throne." The suspense came to an abrupt end as he spoke in the direction of the castle. A shadow far larger than the council was awakening. It was the true ancestor of the Wolf clan. As described in their legends, a terrifying entity roused from its eternal slumber by our recent awakening, on the horizon of the kingdom of winter. That massive black shadow, like a moving floating Icelandes bearing down on the ruins of the sacred spring, where we stand. It is the shadow of the ancestors. A terrifying entity sealed within the void when the Wolf clan founded their kingdom. The pure energy unleashed during our recent battles served as a guiding light, forcibly rousing it from its Tenthasandier slumber. Silas's body remained in a state of extreme weakness, though the domineering aura of the Wolf King still radiated from him. The drain on his soul had left his face deathly pale. He gazed at the shadow that obscured the sky, his voice low and icy. "The ancestor has not fully awakened. He merely sensed the power of the Holy Maiden within you, a power capable of shaking the very foundations of kingship. Elena, he intends to devour us both, using you as a vessel to completely reshape the world's order of rule. I will never let him get his way." I gripped Silas's hand firmly. By now, the power of our bond was no longer just a connection, it had become a lifeline linking us both. By the time we returned to the castle, the once proud Wolf clan lords were already trembling in fear under the ancestors' overwhelming presence. The castle's defensive magic array crumbled like paper in the face of the ancestors' projection, and the entire Winterland was plunged into despair. The remnants of the Council of Elders attempted to invoke the ancestors' mercy through an ancient pact, only to be directly annihilated by the ancestors' dark will. Beneath that immense black silhouette, I, too, sensed the true nature of this power. It was not mere evil, but an extremely twisted form of Ordera logic of domination that places power above the soul. Silas, what he wants is to shatter the balance. I looked up at the massive shadow of the beast hovering above the castle, and a sudden, unprecedented realization dawned on me. Unless we destroy his will, werewolves and humans in this world will forever remain in a relationship of predator and prey. What are you going to do? Silas turned his head, his eyes filled with a trust he had never shown before. "Lend me your wolf's heart," I said calmly, my voice cutting through the winter wind and snow. "What we seek to build is not the rule of werewolves, but the fusion of our bloodlines. Since I am the Holy Maiden, I must offer myself as a sacrifice to lift the curse from this forbidden power." Without a moment's hesitation, Silas didn't even ask if I would die. He simply took a deep breath and pressed the emblem of kingship on his chest into the palm of my hand. In that moment, he entrusted his final source of life to me. As the colossal shadow of the ancestor swooped down, the world seemed to stand still for a split second. I soared upward to meet the darkness that obscured the sky. The white light within me intertwined with the golden aura of Ceres's wolf spirit, transforming into a brand new, blazing inferno. I no longer concealed the so-called power of the Slayer King, but unleashed it completely. At the moment of impact, I saw my ancestors' aged eyes that were likewise filled with the pain and despair of being cursed. I chose not to destroy him, but instead, through the power of that fusion, I conveyed to him the truth within me about love and covenant. A blinding white light so intense it could tear a soul apart exploded. The entire sky over the Winterland was cleansed by this unprecedented force. The dark shadow disintegrated amid screams, not in destruction, but in a complete vanishing into nothingness. At that moment, the castle shook violently. The instinct to enslave humans deeply rooted in the wolf clan's bloodline seemed to be instantly freed from its shackles under the glow of that light. I don't know how long it was, but I felt as if my body were being lifted by a tremendous force, slowly descending toward the castle's terrace. When I opened my eyes, a deathly silence surrounded me. Silas was holding me tightly. The color had returned to his face, and the black curse mark that had coiled around his neck had vanished completely. The werewolf lords, both inside and outside the castle, were now gazing up at the sky. The frenzied wildness in their eyes seemed to have softened considerably, replaced by a glow known as awakening. Did we win? I whispered weakly. We've brought an era to a close, Silas said gently as he brushed the dust from my face. His kiss landed on my brow, and in that moment, there was no weight of any contract, only two hearts beating in unison. The laws of the Kingdom of Winter were completely rewritten. There were no more sacrifices, no more hunts. After this catastrophe, humans and werewolves finally entered into a contract of equality. I am no longer that lowly apothecary, nor am I the so-called holy maiden of the Slayer King. I am the Queen of Winter, and the one and only soulmate of Sarah's. As the night breeze blew, the lights of hope flickered on the castle's spires. We stood on the terrace, looking down upon this land that had once been steeped in bloodshed. Silas held my hand. The ring between his fingers still glowed faintly, a symbol of the future we had built together. This has really been a long nightmare, I murmured, gazing at the forest in the distance. No. Silas pulled me into his arms, his voice unusually steady in the still of the night. This is just the beginning. In this new era that belongs to us, Elena, the story has only just begun. He lowered his head, and in those tender eyes, I saw eternity. Our love became the only truth in this world.